Hello everybody and welcome to the Daily Splatt. Today is our 8th video in our series of 20 concerning the English Premier League season 2011-2012. We're reviewing the season that was, and today we're on to Liverpool. So let's get cracking. Liverpool's season began with a 1-1 draw with Sunderland. Luis Suarez scoring the opener, but sadly they couldn't hold on. I believe it was Seb Larsson that got the equaliser, so a somewhat disappointing opening day result, a draw at home with Sunderland. The season concluded with a 1-0 loss against Swansea. Sandwiched in between that was about 36 games, league-wise, and a couple of other cup games of just the most peculiar season that I think Liverpool have had in a long time. Kenny Dalglish was in charge. He isn't now. In fact, peculiarly enough, I couldn't say that word, but strangely enough, there we go, the manager who beat him in his last game, Brendan Rodgers, is now the Liverpool manager. More on that in a little bit. So, the season started relatively okay, but then along came October and the Liverpool-Manchester United match. Normally a pretty feisty affair, but this one was feisty for all the wrong reasons afterwards, when it came out that Luis Suarez had racially abused, at the time allegedly racially abused, Patrice Evra. This case rolled on for months. It wasn't particularly well dealt with by Liverpool or Kenny Dalglish with those supporting Suarez shirts, you know, all that business, and basically it came down to the fact that, well, he had been racist. Quite simply, it was deemed that he had been so and received an 8-game ban accordingly. Obviously that was a big distraction for Liverpool in the season, and they didn't have a great start. And you know, when you consider they had brought in these new players, Stuart Downing from Aston Villa, Jordan Henderson from Sunderland, Charlie Adam from Blackpool, and none of them really shone in any particular way. Charlie Adam had an okay start to the campaign, but after that he was far from his best, to be perfectly honest. But there you go. Of course, some of the more recent arrivals, Luis Suarez scoring a few goals, but you know, causing a lot of trouble off the pitch as well as on it. And then there was Andy Carroll, who just, for the life of him, couldn't score. Despite all this, Liverpool actually made it to the semi-finals of the League Cup towards the end of the year, where they played Manchester City, and they beat them over 2 legs, drawing 2-2 at Anfield, or at the Etihad, I forget, and winning one of the games 1-0. Basically, they knocked out Manchester City to reach a League Cup final with Cardiff City, which they very nearly didn't win. It had to go to penalties. It ended up being 2-2. Pretty okay game, but a terrible, terrible shootout, with Liverpool eventually prevailing by being the least worst team in the shootout. So, a first trophy in 6 years, that's a success. They also reached the FA Cup final, beating Everton and Manchester United along the way, so you know, some good bonuses on their rivalries. In the final, they played Chelsea and they got beat 2-1. And it was a fairly comfortable 2-1 for the majority of the game for Chelsea. Liverpool only started playing in the last half an hour. Carroll did get a goal and almost had another, but for a great goal line save by Petr Cech. Sadly though, it was the league form that was important, and Liverpool ended up finishing 8th, winning just 5 games at Anfield in the whole season. 5 out of 19. It's quite frankly not good enough. The owners seem to have agreed with me, because they have sacked Kenny Dalglish. He's been let go at the end of the season. They've said, look, thank you for coming in and doing 18 months. Obviously he took over at a very difficult time after all the Hicks and Gillette stuff had just started to die down, and obviously Roy Hodgson was deemed to be not all that good. Of course, now he's England manager. But anyway, so there was that. Kenny, you know, he had a season in charge, but to be honest, I don't think he had that great a season. And Liverpool's priority for the season going into it was to finish in the top 4. I think Dalglish realised a couple of months in, that's not going to be possible, or he didn't think it was possible, so he focused on the cups, reaching the finals of both cups they were in, winning one and just missing out on the other. So, you know, winning a trophy, that has to be seen as a successful season in a lot of people's eyes. Certainly Kenny Dalglish thought it was a successful season. The owners disagreed. Kenny Dalglish has been given the flick, and in his place comes Brendan Rodgers, 39 years young, with lots of ambitious footballing ideas, which he demonstrated this season at Swansea City, and comes with the recommendation of Jose Mourinho, who worked with him at Chelsea, or more specifically, Rodgers worked under him at Chelsea. All in all, Liverpool's season has been a bit weird. A bit like Chelsea, if you were grading it purely on the Premier League form, you'd have to give them a D minus, basically, because it's finishing eighth. Liverpool eighth. Not good enough. But if you judge the fact they had some of the good cup runs, I think you have to give them overall a C minus, because I am weighting this very heavily on the league. League Cup, yeah, first trophy in 6 years. That's good for them. They'll be happy with that. First trip to Wembley for quite a while as well. Certainly first trip to the new Wembley, and obviously they've been there 3 times this season, so they're doing all right. But they have shown they have got the capability to win important games and cup games, and they tended to do okay in the important games of the league. It was just they kept losing to silly teams. We saw this the previous season when Roy Hodgson was in charge, and then Dalglish afterwards. There were times when they'd just lose silly games. Like to Blackpool, they lost both those games in the previous season. This season, of course, losing to Swansea was ridiculous. They had games where they couldn't beat Norwich, or a very poor Aston Villa, or Wigan beat them at Anfield. There was lots of basically just not very good games at all, not very good performances, and Liverpool's squad is going to need a bit of an overhaul. I don't think Carroll is good enough yet to be a starting striker for them, but how else is he going to get experience? You could loan him out somewhere, but I think they just have to try to stick with him and get the system to work with him, or alternatively, just sell him and move him on somewhere else. Luis Suarez, whilst being a disreputable toe rag, is their best player. He's capable of doing things in a match that nobody else really is in that squad, with the exception of Steven Gerrard once in a blue moon when he's fit, which is becoming increasingly rare these days. They need to bring in somebody to support Suarez. But the trouble is they've got to try and attract somebody. Liverpool's ambition for next season has to be qualifying for, at the very least, the Europa League. I mean, the fact that they're only in the Europa League by virtue of winning the League Cup is a bit ridiculous. They should be finishing higher than 8th. I mean, Everton finished above them, and that will be very disappointing for lots of Liverpool fans. But new manager, possible exciting new football, possibly Gylfi Sigurdsson coming in, because it's still up in the air whether he has actually signed for Swansea or not. Sadly, for Liverpool fans at least, no other Swansea players will be making the transition for at least 12 months, because the clubs, Swansea and Liverpool, have an agreement that Brendan can't go cherry-picking his old players for that time period, which is fair enough, I think. So what else do they need? Well, some new midfielders. Dirk Kuyt's gone, so they need somebody to replace him, that sort of winger, backup, auxiliary forward position. Some new defenders. Jamie Carragher isn't once what he was. Daniel Agger has never been what he claimed to be. Jose Enrique's done okay at left back. Pepe Reina had sort of an average season, which by his standards means he had a poor season. Glenn Johnson has had a fair few injury troubles, but it looked a bit more settled in a few games. Jamie Carragher he's too old. Skirtle's good. I think they need somebody to pair with Skirtle, and the youngster Sebastian Coates did show some promise in certain games. Scored a very good goal against QPR as well, but it's not quite enough. And the one good thing for Liverpool next season is they should have a fully fit Lucas Leiva. I do think missing him through injury from November onwards was a big blow for them. So, because he has turned out to be a fairly decent player in the middle, just breaking up the play and distributing the balls about. And Stuart Downey just had an absolute stinker of a season. Surely he can't be that bad next season. Surely. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, that's going to do for Liverpool. C-, try again next year. I do think that they will be better next year, and I'm trying to be as impartial as I can as a Manchester United fan. But I do think they will be better next year, and 7th at least. I think particularly if Brendan Rodgers can get the players on side, then I think you could be looking at some better times at Liverpool. And of course the ground is going to be expanded on. Apparently there's plans to demolish some of the houses nearby and build a bigger stadium. I think that's very important for the future of that club, because that needs to happen sooner rather than later for Liverpool. Me personally, I'm fine with them being stuck in the past, but there you go. Okay, tomorrow, Manchester City. Keep that. I've got to keep this impartial t-shirt on, because it's going to be hard. Anyway, so that's all for today. Tune in tomorrow for the Manchester City season review, and we'll talk to you then. Until then, bye-bye.